So we are talking about impermanence. We are talking about death and dying, the transformation, passing uh, into a different state, no longer in the physical body, the sense of impermanence, the sense that many of us, maybe when we are younger, we have this sense of permanence, like we're going to be here forever. The body never deteriorates. And then maybe as we age, we start to see that the body actually does start to deteriorate to some degree. We have an entire culture that is anti-aging. And if you just think of those words, anti-aging, it's like we shouldn't age, like there's something bad in aging, as opposed to totally embracing our aging, and almost like aging with dignity, or aging with beauty, or aging with presence, or aging with love, or whatever it might be. We have all these anti-aging techniques. It's like, oh, anti-aging, I need to stop aging, right? It's like, stop it, etc., etc. And then we always come up to the the reality that we're changing. That there's an aspect of impermanence, that we need to be aware of. And oftentimes, just like anything in the practice of mindfulness, bringing awareness to that can help, can even help shift our own preconceived notions around it, right? Whatever preconceived notions we may have. I know that when I was younger, I definitely had preconceived notions that death is bad, death is wrong, even that death is a medical event, right? Because so many people die in the hospital, and going through medical school, it was like, oh, that's where you die. And then starting to learn about hospice and palliative care and home hospice and stuff like that. That death actually does not have to be a medical event. It should not primarily be a medical event. It can be a very spiritual, transformative event. In fact, very spiritual and transformative event. Many people, when they live their life, don't really think about dying, don't really think about death, don't really think about impermanence or meditate on it. There's a whole bunch of practices, though, in sort of Eastern philosophy, where they honor the process with dignity and respect. In fact, many monks, even in their mindfulness or monk training, meditate over dead bodies, for instance, and look at and actually watch physical bodies decompose in real time. And that's their practice for weeks, is they meditate on the bodies. One of my journeys with my wife, this is one of the reasons why I love my wife, and we have many discussions about this. After we got married in 2009, she planned our honeymoon, and we went to India. And the first time we went to India, we flew into New Delhi, and we spent a night in New Delhi. And then the next day, we took a plane to Varanasi, or Benares, as some people know it. And Varanasi is sort of known as one of the most spiritual cities in India, where they have all the burning ghats, where they're burning. They have a number of burning ghats. The Ganges River comes through it. There's a number of practitioners of various faiths, mostly Hindu. Um, but there's burning ghats, and the burning ghats are essentially where people bring the dying body, and you wash the body in the Ganges in the Ganges River, and then burn him. And there's even a thought where if the uh, as the pressure builds up in the skull, and if you hear a pop from the skull, that's actually the that person was that their consciousness was actually dispersed into the universe. So there's a number of various practices around, let's say, honoring the dying, bathing their bodies, being with the dying, being with this sense of impermanence, meditating on an actively dying body, whatever it might be, that helps us live more fully. Or like we disentangle our attachment to this concept of, let's say, anti-aging. Death is wrong, aging is bad, et cetera, et cetera. And so I have this, Thich Nhat Hanh has always been a powerful teacher for me and many others. And so, I just wanted to share a quote with you from him. We have to nourish our insight into impermanence every day. If we do, we will live more deeply, suffer less, and enjoy life much more. We have to nourish our insight into impermanence every day. If we do, we will live more deeply, suffer less, and enjoy life much more. And so that quote, when I found that quote, I'm like, that's why we are doing this in this mindfulness group. Okay. Because if we learn to bring, many people, I don't know, maybe people, I don't really like to talk about, there's resistance in even thinking about death and dying, or, we think that death is sort of for other people or out there, or, not really something that we want to bring insight to, right? Not something that we want to have it be a focus of our meditation for the day. Maybe there's even that notion of, don't really want to think about death, or it's uncomfortable for me. Okay, well, that's actually something really powerful to look at, right? And so for me, it seems like the more insight and practice I bring into impermanence, like, wow, we're not going to be here forever. My body is not going to, be in this same state, let's say. Hopefully, it'll still be able to function in 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it might be, right? Or um, as Carnell says, she certainly doesn't act like she's 82. Well, how does an 82-year-old act, right? This is how I act. This is how I act. This is me as an 82-year-old. Woo! And then it's like, wow. And I see that, and what do I say? I'd like to be like Carnell when she's 82, right? That's a goal to me. That's a goal. That's like beauty. Like, wow, man, vibrancy and still learning and still meditating, coming, and et cetera, et cetera. So I see that, and to me, that's sort of a like a goal. Like, may I be able to have that ability to be as vibrant at 82 as Carnell, for instance. But yet bringing insight into this concept of impermanence has helped me. It's helped me be a better father. It's helped me be a better husband. It's helped me be a better physician. It's helped me be a better human being. It's helped me to enjoy every moment of my life more. Why? Because I know, for instance, when I am smelling that rose or that flower, and I'm taking that extra bit of time to just bring in that sense of smell, of aroma from that flower in that moment, that I'm not going to be able to do that forever. And so there's the moment of really bringing it in. And we've sort of talked about this, right? Of like creating the moments that bring you joy and happiness and enhancing those moments, and therefore living more fully, right? If I thought, for instance, that, well, this is just going to be like this for forever, or I'm going to be able to eat pizza forever. It's like, look, every slice of pizza I eat, I can tell you I enjoy it. Wow, look at these flavors of this coming together with that. And here I am eating, right? Because I know that it's not going to be forever. And so that it has actually allowed me to enjoy my life more. And when I'm holding my kids, for instance, or we're walking to school and I get to hold their hand, I know that that's not going to be forever, right? There's the moment. Wow, how lucky am I that, today as my daughter goes to first grade, that I get to hold her hand as she walks into the classroom. Divine, right? And that's not going to be forever. And I'm not holding on to it, right? That's that sense of impermanence. That moment was enriched. It was felt in that moment, in that time, and that's it. And now it's just a moment. And there'll be a new moment, and a new moment, and a new moment. But that moment was lived fully. And so Hafiz, who's a poet, he wrote this called Deepening the Wonder. Deepening the wonder. Death is a favor to us. That's a good one. Right? Death is doing us a favor. But our scales have lost their balance. The impermanence of the body should give us great clarity, deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes. Isn't that great? One of my favorite things is when you find these poems and they really resonate with your practice or the way of life. The impermanence of the body should give us great clarity, deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes. Of this mysterious existence we share and are surely just traveling through. Isn't that just we are sharing this experience. Honestly, that's what that brings to me, right? We're sharing this experience. Like, let's just rest back in that. Wow, this marvel. Here we are, right? Together. It brings tears to my eyes. Really so beautiful, right? Mysterious existence. So the impermanence of the body should give us great clarity, deepening the wonder in our senses and eyes of this mysterious existence we share and are surely just traveling through. And this is where I got that quote. I forgot where I got it from. If I were in the tavern tonight, Hafiz would call it drinks. And as the master poured, I would be reminded that all I know of life and myself is that we are just a mid-flight of golden wine between his pitcher and his cup. Can you imagine that? Where did you come from? The pitcher. Where are you going to? The cup. Our life is the mid-flight of the goal. Here's the pitcher, right? And here's the cup. And our life is that mid-flight. I kind of like that image. And as the master poured, I would be reminded that all I know of life and myself is that we are just a mid-air flight of golden wine between his pitcher and his cup. And if I were in the tavern tonight, I would buy freely for everyone in this world, because our marriage with cruel beauty of time and space cannot endure very long. Death is a favor to us, but our minds have lost their balance. The miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illuminated ones laugh and sing. The miraculous existence and impermanence of form always makes the illuminated ones laugh and sing. Laugh and sing. Right? So here we are, traveling through, right, in this deep wonder, in the mystery of life, in the mystery of this thing we call life. And yet, when we do have loss, there is grief, right? There's sort of there's grief. I heard a great quote. Grief is love with no place to go. Grief is love with no place to go. Grief can be very difficult. Many of you have probably grieved many times, probably. Whether it's the grief of the loss of somebody you know, a close friend, relative, mother, father, grandfather, son, daughter, granddaughter, grandson, whatever, pet. There's also grief of losing a job, or grief of a way of life that you had, grief of a pet, grief of moving cities, grief of being traumatized, right? Grief of somebody lying to you, mistrusting, abusing power, whatever that might be. We can bring mindfulness to grief, though. And it's a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool to help bring mindfulness to grief. Simply asking ourselves, what am I noticing? Right? And oftentimes we might want to throw that question out the window and say, F you. I'm really missing my, father, husband, wife, mother, child, whatever it might be. And just being in the grief, whatever that might be for you, in the present moment, and being aware of it. Many people, grief might be so difficult that, for instance, we try to find things, we try to avoid grief. Right? There's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of barriers to grief. Staying busy, trying to bargain. Has something ever? Have you ever grieved something, or been in a state of grief, and you try to set up a lot of different appointments, or you might actually try to find more jobs to do? Excuse me. There's the bargaining mind, which I think is really interesting. I do the bargaining mind. I'm definitely a bargainer. like you're in a state of grief, and you make like a pact, like if you help me find my keys, I will give up, candy for a week or something like that. And then all of a sudden you find your keys and you're like, oh, I found them. I don't need to give up candy for. I didn't make the pact yet. I didn't make the pact. All right, that's me. That's fully me. When my kids are when my kids are sick, I definitely go to the bargaining mind. For me, uh, having kids be sick is probably one of the worst, like physical, it's like heart wrenching for me. And so I definitely go to the bargaining mind, and that's a way for me to try to avoid grief. Um, Many people blame, like my wife blames herself, shames herself, for instance, like, I must have done something wrong, or the situation is wrong or something like that. Shaming. So we shift. It's almost like we take grief, and maybe the sensations are so powerful, they're so potent that we can't be with them. And so we shift them to something that we feel more comfortable being in, like self blame. Because if that's a pattern that has occurred for us over our lifetime, then we're going to use that, right? You might actually be more comfortable with self blame than you are with grief. I'm more comfortable with sort of creating this bargaining contract, right? By giving up candy or, chips or my favorite French fries or whatever it might be, than grieving. All right. Um, and yet it's back there, right? Very present, very present. And so, in a way, as we practice mindfulness, hopefully when we're not grieving, we then learn how to bring mindfulness, paying attention to the present moment without judgment, to grief, to impermanence. Even if we have a difficult time with bringing insight to impermanence, that we bring mindfulness to it. And how might this look like? Well, as best we can, it might be trying to, for instance, sit with something that we do feel safer with. Maybe it's our breath. Maybe we're holding a stuffed animal in our hands. Maybe we're holding a flower in our hands. Maybe we're looking at a picture of the one we've lost, and that feels comforting. Maybe we're going for a walk and connecting with nature. And as we are in that state, for instance, there's a um, there's a slight widening of our attention and our awareness. You might shift your attention to the grief. And can there be a slight softening, let's say, of the edges of where we meet the grief? Can there be a softening? And if it becomes too much, we simply go to whatever we feel comfortable with, squeezing our teddy bear ever so slightly more. Or even if tears are coming down our eyes, noticing the sensation of the tears as best we can, noticing the emotions that are arising. And seeing, with the practice of mindfulness, can we so slightly more go into, soften the edge of where we're meeting the grief, so that we can be more with the presence of the grief that's present. And this is difficult. This is not easy. Okay, when I say that, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go write the ABCs. Okay. As we do that, maybe there's an opening right? There's an opening to an insight. Maybe there's an opening to a revelation. Maybe there's an opening to the reality of impermanence, the reality of change. The reality of a loving presence, a loving awareness that is always there, that we might not be paying attention to or resonating with because there's so much grief that is present. And so we bring mindfulness to it. We bring mindfulness to it. Right. The other thing is that as community, for instance, that we can, that maybe you need someone else, that maybe there is the need for a loving presence that can help you through the grief. And if that's necessary, then that's something that's necessary. Going back to Thich Nhat Hanh, he has a number of stories of his grief. His most potent one that is shared the most is when his mother died. He wrote in his journal, the day his mother died, "A serious misfortune of my life has arrived. I suffered more than 1 year after the passing away of my mother." So, here is this Vietnamese Buddhist monk who suffered for 1 year, right after the passing of his mother. Despite all the trainings he had, despite all the knowledge and trainings and meditation and everything he had, right? He was still suffering for a year, suffering. Mother left. He teaches impermanence. That's a big part of Buddhist tradition. But one night in the highlands of Vietnam, I was sleeping in the hut in my hermitage. I dreamed of my mother. I saw myself sitting with her, and we were having a wonderful talk. I was sleeping in my hut in the hermitage. I dreamt of my mother. I saw myself sitting with her, and we were having a wonderful talk. It's like you're having tea, right? She looked young and beautiful, her hair flowing down. It was so pleasant to sit there and talk to her, as if she had never died. When I woke up, it was about 2 a.m, and I felt very strongly that I had never lost my mother. The impression that my mother was still with me was very clear. I understood then that the idea of having lost my mother was just an idea. Whew. Wow. After a year of suffering, it was obvious in that moment that my mother is always alive in me. I opened the door and went outside. The entire hillside was bathed in moonlight. It was a hill covered with tea plants, and my hut was set behind the temple halfway up. Walking slowly in the moonlight through the rows of tea plants, I noticed my mother was still with me. She was the moonlight, caressing me as she had done so often, very tender, very sweet, wonderful. Each time my feet touched the earth, I knew my mother was there with me. I knew this body was not mine, but a living continuation of my mother and my father and my grandparents and my great-grandparents. Of all my ancestors, those feet that I saw as my feet were actually our feet. Together, my mother and I were leaving footprints in the damp soil. From that moment on, the idea that I had lost my mother no longer existed. All I had to do was look at the palm of my hand, feel the breeze on my face or the earth under my feet to remember that my mother is always with me, available at any time. That to me is probably one of the most, powerful, not only acknowledgments, let's say, of grief and suffering from a Buddhist monk for 1 year, uh, and then this realization. I understood that the idea of having lost my mother was just an idea. It was obvious in that moment that my mother is always alive in me, and having that felt sense of that. Now, it's different to come to this realization yourself as opposed to somebody saying, oh, the idea that your mother is gone is just an idea, right? I'm not sure I would ever sort of tell that to somebody who was grieving. They'd probably punch me in the face. My, but that sense of what is it, that impermanence, and then where are they? Are they present, right? Are they still around? And that sense of being everywhere, but no longer in that physical encasement, right? The bodysuit that we called my mother, or my father, or my son, or daughter, or whatever it might be, or myself, right? Or myself. And so, with that, that's sort of the meditation that we're going to do today. Is on that sense of, well, we'll see if we get there. The sense of, can you imagine the all-pervasive energy of anyone that you have lost, or anything that you've lost, or any animal or anything like that, being all around you, being the soil, being the water, being your flesh, whatever it might be, right? All right. I just really, I think about everyone in this group often, and I just really, acknowledge the time that we spend together. It's really beautiful, and really want to acknowledge that. And we're coming on to, we're almost coming on to 4 years, and it's been really beautiful, and I feel really blessed and honored to be with you each and every time, to be talking about things like impermanence, grief, dying, topics that maybe you don't want to talk about, or that might be difficult to talk about, or that you're sort of even here listening and gaining some insight, or whatever it might be. But I just feel like it's a huge honor and blessing. So thank you for this practice together. Okay, so let's find a comfortable posture. A posture you will feel relaxed yet alert. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable closing your eyes. If not, having a soft downward gaze. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. And with each in-breath, bringing in the present moment. And with each out-breath, releasing any tension you may feel in your body. And taking this moment to give yourself permission to be here now. You're going to give yourself permission for the next 10 to 15 minutes to participate in this meditation as best you can. That there's no place you need to go or be or do. And if you feel any discomfort or tension in your body, see if a gentle movement or just simply an acknowledgement of that area and paying attention to your anchor. Directing your attention to a place you can direct your attention to, that you feel safer, that brings some sense of comfort. Whatever that might be. And simply in this practice, you see that you can direct your attention. That you can choose where to direct your attention to. And as your mind wanders, bringing it back to your anchor. And now, bringing your attention to your whole body. Your whole body as a living, breathing body. Here now. Resonating. This whole machine at work. All the various organs put together, functioning as you. Your heart is beating the blood to all parts of your body that need the oxygen and the nutrients. Your lungs are breathing in the air that gets rid of the carbon dioxide and brings in the oxygen. Your kidneys and liver filtering your blood, removing any toxins. Your stomach digesting your food. Your intestines and colon absorbing your food and helping get rid of the parts it doesn't want. Your arms and legs helping you move. Your spine, back, neck, hips, keeping you flexible. Your feet, able to feel contact with the earth and the surface it's on, being able to walk to support your whole body. Your hands, being able to reach, feel, touch. Your eyes, nose, mouth, ears, being able to see, smell, taste, and hear. Your mind and heart, feeling emotions, taking all the sensory information you're gathering, creating the experience of now. Just taking your whole body in. And noticing the body made up of organs. The organs made up of tissues. The tissues made up of cells. The cells made up of molecules. The molecules made up of atoms. The atoms made up of electrons and protons and neutrons. How small can we get? Asking yourself, who are you? Are you the body or a circulating electron moving in space? Or neither, or both? And from that sense of wonder, the mystery of life, all the electrons, all the subatomic particles that make up the electrons and neutrons and protons, that make up the atoms, that make up the molecules. Where were they prior to your physical creation? What other object did they belong to? What other object did they create? So we work on expanding our awareness from our body down to the atom, down to the subatomic particle. Expanding your awareness to include all other objects in the world and in the universe, all people, all animals, all plants, all the water making up the oceans and the seas. Can you imagine this continuum from the molecules that make up your body to the molecules in the air, to the molecules in the ocean, to the molecules making up the food you eat, to the molecules making up another human being. That there's no difference. It's all one. And as our body changes and transforms and passes, what happens to those molecules? Where do they go? Who or what may use them next? Resting in the great mystery of our life, of this universe, of our creation. As still you are in this physical body, breathing, directing your attention back to your anchor. And putting your hands to your heart. And as you take 2 or 3 deep breaths, sending some love and gratitude to yourself and your body for everything it has done. Feeling your feet on the ground. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed. Reorienting yourself to your room and your surroundings. And just taking a moment to reflect on your practice. I send you all love and health. I wish you all the best. Have a beautiful weekend. Okay, bye-bye.